Hello and welcome back to SJ Cartier Limited Convos. And today I'm going to do part two of why is there so much disagreements and arguments between religions when in fact religions all actually ask for the same thing from each of their followers, and it also gives us understanding of the previous generation or the ones that are coming ahead of us. So today I'm actually going to go into pork, haram, the swine, the pig. That seems to be a lot of confusion amongst cultures, but when you actually look at the books, you understand exactly whether or not you should be eating pork, pig, swine, depending on your faith. So first of all, last time I went from Islam to Christianity to Judaism. I'm going to go to Christianity first today. And after a little Google search, I'll show you again my little searches. So you can pause the screen when you need to, so you know exactly what I'm reading from Google. So today is most Christians are permitted to eat pork because the New Testament abolished the Old Testament dietary laws that forbade it. So if you look at my previous videos, you will see that, funnily enough, the actual point that I was trying to make is when you are Christian and you are following the Old Testament and you are following the book of the Bible, the book that Jesus Christ brought to us, that God brought to us via Jesus Christ, then you will understand there's nothing wrong with you. You continue following your religion. But if you are trying to now live by a lot of the New Testament rules that seem to be changed by man and changed via kings and certain people in power that are able to change the writings, change the publications of these books that the people are receiving, then you may be lost. And if you were Christian, for example, then that's where Islam comes in, because Islam gives us the strict guidelines of forget what man has tried to change. We understand man has its own desires. And right now we're going to bring you a book that cannot be changed and that gives you strict rules for you humans, so you understand how you should be carrying yourselves on a day-to-day life. And as we read here in the very first sentence about Christians, it states how Christians are permitted to eat pork because of the New Testament. Why was the New Testament changed? Why? Because the New Testament abolished the Old Testament dietary laws that forbade it. Astaghfirullah. Astaghfirullah. So when there's a lot of Christians out there now that seem to like pork and pig and bacon and all these other things, do you not think that you should be following the Old Testament and not the New Testament? Do you not think the rulers that you as a normal person seem to think are controlling you are controlling even how you should think via religion, via TV, via music, via all these variety of ways that they can interact with us? It could even be influencers on Instagram, on YouTube. It could just be influencers, people that they pay to promote a certain narrative that you should follow. And that's the same here with Christians here with the Bible, because they have now been promoted the New Testament and have been told to forget all the Old Testament rulings. I'll continue reading. However, some Christian denominations, such as Seventh-day Adventists, adhere to the Old Testament laws and abstain from pork, considering it unclean. The Old Testament prohibition. The Old Testament, specifically in Leviticus 11, forbids the consumption of pork because pigs are considered ritually unclean due to not chewing the cud despite having cloven hooves. These dietary laws were part of the covenant between God and the Israelites. So you remember when I says Rastafarians and Islam have some similarities, and I can understand, not even understand. I'm not even going to say understand, because I know I'm Muslim and I understand I follow the faith of Allah. but I have to overstand that I still stick to a lot of my Rastafarian beliefs and feelings of how a human should be and the energies we should carry in our personality, in our person, in our nature. And the Israelites are what the Rastafarians are trying to promote, because the Rastafarians believe that Haile Selassie, which is trying to say is another prophet, is one of the original Israelites and as the blood of the original Israelites. And they, as Rastafarians, they don't concern themselves with the New Testament. They concern themselves with the Old Testament. That's why even here you see that the old, however, some Christian denominations, such as the Seventh-day Adventists, if you find a lot of Seventh-day Adventists are actually Caribbean backgrounds. So if you understand they are actually following the rules of not eating pork, they're following the rules of the original Israelites, you'll understand why Rastafarianism can consider very close to Islam, just like Christianity and Judaism is, when you are following the correct rulings. The New Testament changes. Let's go into those changes and let's consider why these changes were made, for what desires, for who made these changes. In the New Testament, Jesus declared all foods to be clean. All foods to be clean. That's what they claim, Jesus claimed. So this is the belief from the New Testament. The Apostle Peter had a vision from God that taught him not to consider any food or person unclean from a religious standpoint. The Apostle Paul also taught that those under the new covenant are no longer bound by these laws. Now, I'm going to give you a little insight into Islam and about eating pork in Islam to show you a little understanding of where even some people who have tried to when I say Islam was brought to clarify the previous books so there's no debates, this is what I mean by it, because there may have been some parts of the Bible where the Apostle Peter or Jesus was stating that you can eat any animal certain points, but then so does the Quran. A lot of people aren't aware of this. Did you know, as a Muslim, we are actually allowed to eat pork? Did you know that? Did you know that? But because the Quran is brought to define exactly what we mean, I'm going to define what it means when we can eat pork. You can eat pork if you are starving and you are destitute and there is no other vegetation, no other animals, no other plants, no other water, no other foods to supplement yourself. And if the pig is the only meat or nourishment that you can get at this point and you are close to death, then you are allowed to take a bite of eat pork and pig and whatever. But if there is any kind of vegetation, any kind of water, any kind of other foods around, that is what you resort to before the pig, and you forget the pig because the pig is haram. Now maybe for the Christians that understanding was lost, because you was told by specifications in the original testaments that the pig is unclean, and in the new scriptures it's telling you are at some points able to eat all animals, but that must be with conditions. These conditions seem to be forgotten or not actually understood because they were not clear as they were put in the Quran. So a little knowledge for you there. It's haram to eat pork, but if we are starving and there's no other food as a Muslim, we can actually eat pork. Because as a Muslim, we are not to arm ourselves and turn down any help that is possibly given to us. So for example, we could be in a desert, there is no water, there is no food, and suddenly a pig walks by, that is now your food. You cannot turn down a blessing that could actually save your life when you overstand it. Modern Christian view. Because the New Testament rescinded the Old Testament food laws, the majority of Christians consider pork permissible to eat. A minority of Christian groups, such as Seventh-day Adventists and Hebrew roots Christians, I don't know who that's referring to, but Hebrew is the original language of Jesus, and I think it was Latin. I think it was changed to Latin. Correct me, someone. I can't get it off the top of my head. I do believe Jesus spoke Hebrew amongst the various of languages, and I'm not 100% sure if the Bible originally was written Hebrew, and then it was when it was changed to Latin in the Roman Empire. That's where a lot of the New Testament and certain other things came into play. So I may have to clarify and give some more knowledge, or I may have to do another video after if people misunderstand. But as I say, I am just giving you my understanding, and it is for us together to research these things together. So Hebrew roots Christians, I just like the words roots because it refers to me again as a Caribbean original Israelites, Hebrew Israelites notations and how we should be following. Do not eat pork. So a minority of Christian groups such as Seventh-day Adventists and Hebrew roots Christians do not eat pork as they believe the Old Testament dietary laws are still applicable for them. Yes. Let's go into Islam now and so that's that page, if you can see that clearly, that I was just reading. I showed you the previous one. Now I'm going to go into a quick Google search on what it said about Muslims and eating pork. The pig is one of the few animals universally considered haram. Other universal prohibitions include the consumption of carrion, blood, and animals killed by means other than exsanguination. So by that means of carrion, it means wild boars and things like that. And then any animal that has any blood, which is helped by the way we kill our animals, which is what makes the meat halal. It is killed with at least pain for the animal and at the quickest amount of time for the animal to die, where also at a way that it also drains all the blood, or more than the blood than a normal butcher would regularly drain. So the aim is to get as much blood out of it by killing the animal by its main arteries, allowing all the blood to drain out of these main arteries, which also kills the animal in a short space of time, which means the animal does not suffer for our thirst, food, hunger, if that makes sense. Alcohol is also considered haram, although the interpretation of how much alcohol can be consumed has historically varied. This is what Google is saying, but for me, alcohol is haram because it actually changes how you perceive things, and anything that changes the way you perceive things is haram. Anything that can pollute your natural healthy system. This is why we eat certain meats and we kill them in a certain particular way, and we do not try to eat blood like we are Dracula or someone. We try to drain it all out because it will dirty our insides and make our souls dirty. And if we understand, when we drink alcohol, we then become very out of ourselves, and alcohol, no matter who you are, whatever age you are, will change you from one sip to how much sips. It will change you onto different levels. Everyone has their own tolerance, but we know just one sip can change you whether you have a high tolerance or not. So when we overstand that and then realize we come out of our inhibitions, it makes our souls actually dirty because we are acting immorally, as I was saying, with the dressing of ourselves, of how we should dress in all religions, should be modest, so should be our nature. And that's why certain alcohol, this is why alcohol is prohibited in my understanding as a Muslim, because it actually pollutes us. So I don't know, there where it's saying Some interpretations may allow it. I've never heard any interpretation as from Islam where we accept alcohol. Unless you're a cultural person who just wants to try to find a reason. And that could come down to like someone that smokes weed, for example. They may say weed is mukru, but we all know weed will change how we think, how we act, how we react, and from it changes those things from, and it dirties our inside. Then due to that, regardless of it being a plant, because it may be a plant that we could eat and it gives us health benefits, but when we are burning it and trying to make it into something else, that's what then makes it haram, because it does something to us and we are not doing it, eating it in a natural way. So now I'm going to read a surah that it says, so Surah al-Ma'idah, Surah al-Ma'idah, which is the verse that prohibits us. It says, "Forbidden to you are carrion, blood and swine, what is slaughtered in the name of any other than Allah, where Allah commands believers to avoid impure substances, including pork." And when I say again, Islam and the Quran was brought to give some clarification. Do you understand why Allah has put it in the way He has put it? He has put it specifically as including pork, because He realized via the Christian and the New Testament, the people were following the wrong ruling and they were believing now that pork is now acceptable to eat, when in fact it's not. So he, instead of just talking about carrion and the blood, which is obvious, is now stated the fact of pork. You didn't understand swine, you didn't understand the terminology we were using, so I will use the direct word of pork. This defined derivative serves as the foundation for Islamic dietary laws, emphasizing purity and cleanliness in all aspects of life. So now here's the question for the Jews. This is the point where I'm going to read for the Jews now. So remember, Jews were the original bearers of the book, and they were one of the first books to be given that is still upstanding. Obviously, there was a lot of prophets like the book of Adam and Eve, but the Jews are the original religion where people had to follow as a mass, if that makes sense. So let's go to them now. No, mainstream because I asked the question about everyone: should Muslims eat pork? Should Christians eat pork? Should Jews eat pork? Just simple questions to Google and see what Google comes, and then I'm going to give you my understanding of what I already know from what they're telling me, because I'm just going to it clarifies what I say. But as you see, certain things like some Muslims may see alcohol as possibly permitted. That's astaghfirullah. That's wrong. Yeah. No, mainstream observant Jews do not eat pork because it is not kosher. According to Jewish dietary laws, an animal must have both split hooves and chew its cud to be considered kosher, and pigs only have split hooves. However, many non-observant Jews do eat pork. So as we heard with regards to the Christians, it said, regardless, unclean, because pigs are considered ritually unclean due to not chewing the cud, despite having cloven hooves. So despite they have those hooves, they do not chew the cud. Yeah. And exactly what they are saying here is what the Jews were telling us, is an animal must have both split hooves, which a pig does have, and chew its cud, which a pig does not do, which Christians also were told they do not do. So this is why they are unclean. And then at the end it says, however, many non-observant Jews do eat pork. So again, the ones that are non-observant are not following the Jewish rulings. Just like the Christians who eat pork should understand themselves as not following the Christian rulings. Just like any Muslim that eats pork should consider themselves as not following the Islamic rulings. Doesn't matter if it's a Haribo. Doesn't matter if it's Mr. Kipling's pies. It doesn't matter if it's jam. It doesn't matter. There's a variety of things that have pork in. Sweets. There's a load of things that have pork in that people aren't aware of. So even with the foods we eat that are just normally day to day, do you see how they try to corrupt even the non-eating, the ones that do not want to eat pork, as bacon and sausage? They try to corrupt it in our food and and dirty up our souls because they put it in things that are sweet, that makes it hard for people to give up. Not me. I gave these things up as soon as I started realizing about certain things. You see me checking everything. Certain things you don't even know the name. And when you start realizing you don't know the name and you don't know, you just look for vegan. Just get the vegan sweets. Get the vegan this, whatever. You overstand. So even Jews shouldn't. Yeah? And they originally were told this in the book. This is God's original ruling to us. Alhamdulillah. Religious and dietary laws. Kosher requirements for a mammal to be kosher. It must have both cloven hooves and chew its cud. Pigs, camels, and other animals do not meet both criteria, are not kosher. So pigs and camels. I didn't realize camels. So I understand we're not supposed to eat camels and crocodiles and things like that anyway as a Muslim, but I don't understand why. If I look now in understanding why as a Jew we shouldn't, I'll understand better as a Muslim now why we shouldn't eat wild boar and certain things. It's down to the hooves, it's down to what they chew on, and a variety of other criterias, because that's how the Jews follow it. And as a Muslim, I know I can eat any kosher food. I was living in Stoke Newington, where it's full of Jewish, and I actually loved living down there. I loved shopping in their shops as a Muslim. I preferred shopping in their shops than going to Asda and Tesco or Morrison's round the corner. That was me as a Muslim. I actually loved the respect that a lot of them have. So I overstand their religion. When they are following it to the T, they are beautiful people. I could not judge them when they are following it to their book. Biblical basis. The prohibition is based on a commandment in the Torah, Leviticus 11. In the Torah, Leviticus 11, the same Leviticus 11 that the Christians should be following. Get a little wink in there. That the Christians should be following. So again, as I say, as a Muslim, as a Christian, as a Jew, we should not be arguing, should not be debating. As long as the brother from the Christianity, Jewish or Muslim is following their book to the correct guidelines, there should be no debate between these holy, honest, regular people who just follow their faith. It's the people that aren't trying to follow their faith and trying to add their own rulings and laws and trying to follow the New Testament or misunderstanding the actual books they are reading, that are the problem. They are the problem. Just like some people may say jihadis are a problem. No, a jihad is not a problem. It's a person that misunderstands what a jihad is. So a jihad, I'll show you jihad. I've been going through jihad now, living in Wiltshire, having to deal with people online and deal with certain racial misjudgments, whether it's online or in the local area. That's jihad because it's coming to your front door, it's coming to your business, coming to you directly, and you have to fight it within yourself and not give up and fight back. That's what you have to do. That's jihad. Going out of your way to kill yourself when, as a Muslim, we should not harm our body, let alone anybody else. We shouldn't harm anybody, let alone ourselves, is not jihad. So some people may have misunderstood the jihad when there was a lot of jihadis. A lot of people were asking me, are you going to be a jihadi? No, I'm living jihad as a black man walking around in England. That's jihad already. If you understand the struggle and the strive. Yeah? So The prohibition is based on the commandment in the Torah, Leviticus 11. Pigs are listed as unclean and forbidden for consumption. Enforcement. Some denominations may not consider Jewish dietary laws to be binding and allow pork consumption, while others adhere strictly to all kosher rules. Some of them do adhere strictly to all kosher rules. Dietary choices. Non-observant Jews. Dietary choices. Many non-observant Jews may eat pork, and some studies show a majority of non-observant Jews in the US do eat pork. Astaghfirullah. Astaghfirullah. Varying observance. The level of observance varies widely among individuals, and some may choose to eat pork for personal reasons or out of cultural interest. And that's basically the point of what everything is, in my understanding. When we all follow our book and read our book and understand our book of the rules that it's teaching us, the original scriptures. So I believe the Jews, they have the Torah. The Torah has not changed, I believe, from my understanding, because you can go and read it in whatever language it was originally written in. And I presume the Torah won't have as much changes as the New Testament Bible has. And when you follow the Old Testament as a Christian, you will be an honest person. When you follow the Quran as a Muslim, you will be an honest, genuine person. It's just in your nature. And certain things you will follow, certain things you will realize you don't follow, and certain things you will overstand are cultural things. So I'll give you an overstanding quick. When I pray the Sunnah way. There is a lot of cultural ways to pray that people pray and do certain different things and add additional things in there, when there is just the Sunnah way to pray, which is the way the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam prayed. So understanding me as a Muslim, just because I know when I first became Muslim, there wasn't as many black Muslims or white Muslims, so there wasn't much. It was mostly Pakistani Muslims, Bengalis, and all those other variety of countries that Islam is predominantly in at this moment in time. It was a lot of those. So if I was to follow these people that I was talking to for knowledge, I may have fell into cultural actions. But I had to continue following the Sunnah way and the book of the Quran to my best of my knowledge, with help and understandings from the brothers from whatever culture they're from. And that's the same with Christianity. You'll go into different churches and see a church representing God in completely different ways, because a lot of cultures represent it in different ways, but there is only one way to represent God. The Bible tells you how. Same with the Jewish, the brothers, the Jewish brothers that will be representing Jews and following their book to the law. They follow it to their law. Then they'll have cultural things that they do depending on where they are from. There's the law, the godly law, and then there's culture depending on where we are from. Just like, which I didn't say in the previous video, with dressing of clothes, the women in a hotter country are permitted to dress a bit different to the women in a colder country. Like here, for example. Because the heat is different. Obviously, their permission, the things that they are permitted to do are the same, but depending on the culture where they are living and the heat and the variety of things changes how they think. So the same way in England, when the sun's out, we all take our tops off. It's because we don't see sun. Whereas in a hot country where it's hot all the time, they're just dressed normal, as a normal day. Because culturally it's not needed for them, because it hasn't been grown like that in their nation, in their country like that specifically, which becomes a cultural thing when we overstand. If you overstand me, you overstand me. If you understand me, you understand me. If you don't get me, I apologize. put it in where you don't get me and I'll try to clarify for you. Now, when can you eat pork? As I said previously, as Muslims, pork is completely haram. We are not to eat pork, but there are exceptions. So I'm going to finish this video with an exception, just so you understand, possibly as a Christian, when your exceptions, if you really want to eat pork, you may have to actually go to a desert and starve yourself and actually hope that the pork walks by. But this is the classification of pork as a Muslim. Pork is classified as najas, meaning it is inherently unclean and defiling. Consuming pork would compromise a Muslim's state of purity, making them unfit for certain religious activities. However, in exceptional circumstances, such as excessive hunger or starvation, Muslims are permitted to eat pork. In exceptional circumstances, such as excessive hunger or starvation. So that was part 2 now of why is there so much disagreements between so many religions? And we're all supposed to be following the same thing. Maybe the culture that is being misled and fed to us is deceiving us. Maybe we all need to go back and read our books, including me. So, thank you for joining SJ Cartier Limited Convos today. And I hope everybody watching this, whether you're religious, whether you're not, understands why the pig is unclean and starts considering our decisions in life and looks at all the food that we are processed and given. And I hope you all enjoy your day. So thank you for joining SJ Cartier Limited Convos today. Out.